Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about the most efficient ways to ascend your characters, to collect all of the ascension materials, specifically all of the Evos and Celestial Evos. So let's jump into it. You're going to see we're starting out not with the screen for the game, but with an Excel spreadsheet, and I just think this is the best way to present this information. Hoping to get through it quickly. I'm going to have a longer form video that comes out. I ended up doing a bunch of rolls talking about this stuff in depth. And it went on for over an hour. So really long form. Don't expect anyone to stick around that long. I learned a lot kind of in that process and tested out the numbers with a whole bunch of rolls. Something like almost 3,000 stamina or energy worth of rolling that day. And that's all captured in the video. So I'll get into it and let you guys know what I learned coming out of that. And a lot of it's summarized here in the spreadsheet. So if we look at this kind of going through left to right here, in terms of what you can collect, you got the Evo larva, the Evo, like standard little Evo dude, and the Monarch. And I just kind of did what these are equal to in terms of being able to craft them. You can go from 100 of these equals 10 regular Evos, which equals 1 Monarch. So Monarchs are just massively more valuable, because everything that you can create with Celestial Evos you can create out of Monarchs. And so if you're farming for stuff, I just think it's helpful to know that those larvas have very little value. The Monarchs are obviously where you want to be, and then those can be used to create any of these Celestial Evos. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So if you look in your crafting, I think this is probably pretty well known. You've got common Celestial Evos and rare Celestial Evos, and it doesn't have anything to do with the wings. Some of them that are common have wings, some that are common don't have wings. Like that part doesn't differentiate it. But the important part is how many Monarch Evos are required to make that Celestial Evo. So I'm going to say common are the ones that you can do where it's going to be, say it's red and or like fire and light. Then you'll have 10 fire Monarch Evos and 10 light Monarch Evos, and then you have 2 of the other 3 or 2 Monarchs for the other 3 elements. And so those take 26 Evos, like Monarch Evos altogether. Alright, so those are the common ones. And then rare ones require 2 of the common Celestial Evos and 40 additional Evo Monarchs. So if you add all that up, it comes up to 92 Monarch Evos equivalent. So the common ones are 26, the rare ones are 92. Just in terms of their equivalency. So if you didn't have any other starting materials, you're just going to try to make them out of Monarchs, then that's how much it would cost. That's important to know, because this is like less than a third of the cost, when you're comparing the other ways that you can purchase these. They're kind of the most efficient way to buy, to go through and collect these materials. Alright, so another thing to point out, some of the upper levels in challenge mode, the ones that the only Evo type that you can get is a single Monarch Evo. Those ones have about a 50% chance of dropping a Monarch. So, there's some where you can have, maybe there's a regular Evo and a Monarch, those have lower chances. But if you can get on those upper levels in challenge mode, then you've got a real good chance with these 50% chance on the Monarchs. And that gives you a pretty good way to say, alright, if I invest a certain amount of stamina, I know I can develop any of the Celestial Evos I want, because I've got a good shot at getting these Monarchs. These Monarchs can be turned into any Evo, any Celestial Evo that I want. So I'd kind of said here, just to run these numbers, 10 stamina per Monarch Evo. If you get them, it's 5 stamina each run, and you get it every other time on average. So you can say 10 per Monarch. So you can kind of convert these Celestial Evos, the common ones and the rare, into a stamina equivalent. So this comes out to 260. So we've got here 26 Monarchs are required, so 260 stamina. And similarly for the rare, it'd be 920 stamina. Now there's some different ways to go about getting these, and we'll talk about that. If you just want to do a direct purchase, you can get the common versions for 500 gems, or the rare versions for 800 gems. Now, again, I'd like to point out that it requires a lot more stamina for the rare than it does for the common, so if you were going to purchase them with gems, for sure you should purchase the rare ones and not the common ones. They're a much better deal proportionately. So kind of a first thing to point out there. It's not a terrible deal at 800 gems, depending on what your gem situation is. If you go to the Tower of Ponage, you'll notice similarly, there's, the cost isn't that different. Here we've got like a 30% discount for the commons, but we know that these are much cheaper in terms of stamina. So my general rule across the board, never buy one of these. Never buy a common Celestial Evo from the Tower of Ponage shop. Go ahead and I think most of the currency that I use there is for rare Celestial Evos. That's one of the best uses, I think, to lock down, continue to drive forward and get some of those unlocked. And then if you're going to farm with stamina, something else I wanted to point out here. This is the gem equivalent based on farming these monarchs in the levels I was talking about, the challenge mode. If you're going to spend gems, so the 50 stamina per 20 gems, you can do that once every day. The rate goes up if you do it multiple times. If you purchase stamina once, you get it for 20 gems. This is what you would expect to spend on each of these if you farm. So if you get the equivalent amount of stamina and purchase that each day. Just wanted to be able to point out that it's cheaper if you do it. You'd kind of expect this, but it's cheaper if you do it over time. So you do it for a week. This is approximately a week worth of. It's not a week worth of gems. Forget that I just said that. But it is, 370 gems approximately, much cheaper than doing 800 gems. If you can do it over time, if you're just using that incremental stamina, then that works well. You can also use any extra stamina. I just wanted to be able to provide kind of a gem-to-gem comparison. It's much cheaper to do this over time. I would say go ahead if you using your gems to do that 20 gems for 50 stamina. That's a pretty good purchase. It's way better, it's way more efficient than doing the direct purchase for Celestial Evos. So, just wanted to point that out. A few things here just to keep in mind. Where should we get them? For sure, you shouldn't buy them here. You shouldn't buy these direct. You should make them. You should use stamina. There's different routes to go about this. In terms, I would have said initially before running some of this stuff that farming for monarchs was a pretty efficient route to go to develop your Celestial Evos. I'm going to jump forward and say after a lot of testing, I do believe if you don't have any other materials, if you don't have, say, these common Celestial Evos to start off with, sometimes you'll end up, you've been running this game a long time, you've got a whole bunch of the common Celestial Evos that are needed for a given rare Evo that you need to make. If that's the case, then probably the cheapest, the most efficient path is to just farm those additional Evo Monarchs and you're good to go. And that's probably the fastest route to making that Celestial Evo. If you're starting from scratch, it's better, I ran all the numbers on this, to just go straight, even if there's no ×3 event or anything else going on, it's better to keep running the level for that rare Celestial Evo. Just keep, dumping lots of stamina into it. It's still better to do that than it is to just try to develop 92 Monarch Evos. So I'll hit that again. If it was confusing, we'll talk about it later. But that's just kind of wanted to point out that one of the conclusions that came out of this is even on the days where there's no bonus to getting Celestials, if you were starting from scratch, you didn't have a lot of other materials, it's still better to just run those levels over and over again, and eventually you'll get those Celestials. What was I trying to mention here? Oh, yeah, never buy Monarchs with gems or Ponage currency. It's just ridiculous. The exchange rate's horrible. Alright, jump forward. I'm going to try to keep this one real quick. There's a lot of material here. Again, you can do the long form, but I wanted to do something that was shorter. The way this works, if you were going to, say, run those levels over and over again, we know in the community that there's about a 1% drop rate. My guess is that there's a higher drop rate for the commons and then a lower drop rate for the rares. And it wasn't really clear which. I wasn't getting anything from forums on different rates for the two. But we've heard approximately a 1% drop rate. So I put that in, and the way you run the math for this is it's a binomial distribution, and you've got a certain number of attempts, and then the number of Celestials that you find, you can figure out what the probability of finding a given number of Celestials is. I realize that's a little bit confusing. So I used a probability of success here at 6%. There's a reason for that. So it's normally 1%. If you're running it during the event where it's times 3, the 300% Celestial Evo event, then you get 3%. And then if you go to the Aether shop and buy that boost, I think it's 2,000 or 2,500 of the currency in that shop, and then you can boost your Celestial Evo drop rate times 2, which does stack with the event. So you'll even see it on the levels. It'll say 600%. And that's obviously the best time if you're going to drop a bunch of stamina, like buying the $5 stamina pack and you get 1,500 stamina for it. That's the best time to do it, and then just run those levels. So I wanted to see approximately if I knew I was going to, for example, spend $5, get 1,500 stamina. That's going to allow me to do 300 attempts. And there's normally 1%, now there's a 6% chance. So how many Celestials would I expect to find in those runs? So that's the math that I was setting up in this spreadsheet. So if you look at this, the probability of finding just one is tiny. And that's what I want. That's what the it's kind of the understanding of what's being provided in this column here. It's the probability of finding exactly this number of Celestials. So to find only one, very, very small chance, it gets to be a little bigger as you go down. You get into some reasonable chances along these lines here. So now we're at, let's see, about here, you're at about a 1% chance. 1% chance you'll find 10. So you're going to find a lot. That's the low end. If you want to find the, or what is the most probable number that you'll find, it's actually right here. So this is the peak in the distribution. So we're looking, going to make it with the mouse, some kind of distribution like this. That's going to, and then in the midpoint there, the highest point, most probable, ends up falling right here at 18 Celestial Evos. That's a lot. That's definitely more than you need for most characters to fully ascend them. Some of the higher end characters, they do take a ton. I think it's Alrakis is just a crazy number of Celestial Evos, but you're going to get a lot. If you were normally trying to get 4 or 6 or something to finish off a character, if you do a route like this, you're going to get a whole bunch of these. And you might end up on the higher side. This is just the average number, but you may end up with 15, you may end up with 22. Got kind of a group here. I think I did a little group around them that you've got, the way you can read this again, an 82% chance that you will have something in this range, somewhere between 13 and 23. Just to give a little, ballpark of what you should expect. All right, and then I did it with, again, with 500. I went again to the Aether shop and spent, if this was kind of theoretically when I was drawing this up, you can get 1,000 stamina. That's one of the purchase options in the Aether shop. So that would give me another 200 on top of the 300, so that's 500 attempts. And then I ended up doing it again. I could get 70 more attempts with my daily energy and stuff like that. All right, so then looking at that, the best case scenario, the most attempts, was going to give me an average of something like 34 on average Celestial Evos. All right, I also drew up kind of what my needs were for the team I was trying to build out. You can see that here, kind of what I needed, how many I have of the different Evo types, and just work those out to see a running list of how many I would like to get, how many I needed, how far through this list I'd get. And so you can kind of see if I'm going to get partially, I definitely would get Lorelei, Niveus I could get through for sure, and then I'm going to end up running out somewhere during Alrakis. And that turned out to be the way that it worked. It followed the math that was here more closely than I was expecting. That's the short version of that very long video. It worked out very well. When you do the average, if it's 1%, I think I ran the numbers on that somewhere. Just to kind of say the background on this again, I think if you're using 1% as the drop rate and there's no other event going on, then the expected amount of stamina for each, on average, that you would find as Celestial Evo is about 800 stamina. I forget, kind of ran through the numbers on that, which is less than building it from Monarchs. Now, if you have some Celestial Evos you're going to throw in there, then that'll be a faster route. But I wanted to use this path because I really needed a lot of Celestial Evos. So people who are following this account will know that I got back into the game about 2 months ago, something like that, and all the meta characters have changed, and none of them have been ascended on my account. And I can happily say now that I think I've got 7 characters that went from no ascensions to fully ascended, which required an enormous amount of Celestial Evos, and I'm pretty much done. Those are all done, and I've got another one that's ascended once, and I need to ascend in the final time. But I'm basically set, and this is like 2 months in terms of the teams that I'm going to be using regularly. So let's pop over to the game real quick. Full screen this. Alright, I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I think before I made that one, I had Serenity was already fully ascended, but now Agnon fully ascended, Grondar's fully ascended, I think he already was, Niveus fully ascended, Alrakis fully ascended, and then down here, Lorelei as well, so she's still hanging out down here, I think, with her little 2 stars. It's keeping her down there, and she doesn't have an epic. No epic to be had here. And I've almost done the first ascension here for Moriko. Hey, you guys hear me mess these up a lot. Anyway, so this has worked out very well. Knowing the most efficient way to purchase in the Tower of Ponage, to like how to optimize using the Aether shop here boosts. So this ×2 Celestials, like I mentioned, this does definitely stack, even shows it on the levels. For sure use that. And then the $5 purchase for extra stamina, very helpful during the Celestial event, which seems to be happening once a week. So anyway, that's by far the best way to get all the Celestials you need much, much faster and kind of get your team fully ascended. You can work on other stuff after that. I would say for me, the next limiting factor is probably runes. So getting the kind of well-aligned runes that are supporting the attributes that I'm looking for, that's going to be kind of the next path for me. We'll talk about just some of the things that I mentioned. I'll point them out here. So I had mentioned, you got all your monarchs here that you can craft. If you go to Celestial Evos, you can see any of these that where you can craft them from monarchs exclusively. Then those are the more common ones. And then you can see here 10 plus 10, 2, 2, 2, 26 total monarch Evos to create this common Celestial Evo. I think Ruined is similar, but if we go to something like Arcane, another one that comes up a lot, then you need 2 of the common Celestial Evos and 20 of those same element Monarch Evos. So you can craft any of these, which at least gives you a path. If you're feeling stuck and you don't know how to get that, ascend that character that you really want to move on to the next level, there's always a path. You can always use Monarchs if you've already got some of the materials. If you don't, it does appear to be more efficient to just run through and just keep trying to get it, and you will get it on average more often than having to build it from scratch. We'll look at the Tower of Ponage again. Here are those options, and like I said, I spent all my currency trying to make sure I could get these guys ascended as quickly as possible, and this is what I'm talking about again. The Shadow Evo is one of the rare ones, and these other 2, Jeweled and Stormwind, those are the common ones. Those are just very bad exchange rates. Over time, it's just much more efficient if you can keep making the best, more efficient purchases here. That's it. It's really like the short version of this. I want to try to keep it short. The other video is super long. I did learn probably a little bit more kind of in that process, but it can save you some time. If you stick with it, there's a lot there. It is interesting. I do a lot of rolls, something like almost 3,000 stamina worth. And I really enjoyed that, but try to keep something short and sweet here to get that information out for anybody that needs it. Alright, well that's it for here. I think we're going to probably come back with another video on some other topics, some other things that I learned about recently. We'll get those out as soon as we can. Thanks again for watching. We'll talk to you guys soon.